Okay, everyone. So this is the demonstration for IAM role, right? So I'm just taking you through the whiteboard just to understand what we are going to do because it's kind of a complex thing. You might find it a little bit confusing. So it's better to discuss first on the whiteboard and then to go to the console. Okay, so I have two accounts. One would be the production account and another can be developer account. Okay, we have these two accounts on AWS console. Now what I want to do is I want to create one role. I will be creating a role in production account, okay, which would be giving the access to the S3 bucket. Okay, what that role would be giving? It would be giving the access to the S3 bucket. To whom I want to give this access to? To the users who are there in the developer account. Okay, so whatever user is there in the developer account should be able to access that particular S3 bucket into the production account. So here what we are doing, we want to give the cross account access. So one way to do that is by creating the roles. Okay, so what I'll do here is I'll create a role in production environment. To that role, I'll be attaching one policy, right? That policy would be allowing the access to that particular S3 bucket. And here in the developer account, what I'll do is I'll be attaching a policy to this user, which will allow this user to assume the role. Okay, which role he would be assuming? The role which is there in this production account. Because without permission, without giving the permission to assume the role to this particular user, he or she cannot assume the role that we have created in production account, right? So two-way permissions are given over here, and which is important, or else you would be getting the error or you won't be getting desired results. Okay, so once this is clear, we would be going to our console now. Okay, I'll be having two windows on. Into one window, I'll be having the production account, the one which I'm considering as production account, and another window, the incognito window, where I'll be opening my developer account. Okay, so without wasting time, let's get started with this on the console. Okay guys, so I am on my console over here. As you can see, I am signed into the root user here. I also have an incognito window on. Okay, in that incognito window, I am signed in as Jane, okay, which is having different account number as you can see. See this account number? I'm having a different account of AWS, right, onto which I've created this particular user, that is Jane. Look at this account number, and now I'll take you back to my root account, and this is my account number. Both the account numbers are different, right? So we are trying to create the cross account access over here, right? So once this is done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to IAM over here, right? Okay, sorry for this. Let's close this up. Okay. So here we have the IAM. I'm creating a role. So I'll go to role over here and I'll also duplicate this particular tab. Okay, and I'll be going to S3 as well. Why S3? Because I want to give the access to a particular bucket. Okay, not all the buckets. So I go to IAM. I've selected roles from the left hand pane. I'll create a new role over here. Okay, so when I'm creating the role, what I want is I want to create a role where I want to give the cross account access, right? So I'll be selecting this particular AWS account over here. The trusted entity that I want is AWS account. So do you want to create the role in this account or do you want to give the access to another account? So I'll select another account. I have to give the ID of another account over here, right? So when we'll go to our another account, I'll copy the account number from there and we'll put the account number over here, right? So this is added over here. Now, do you want this options? Do it require external ID or MFA? So I don't want anything as of now. So I'll just simply click on next. Okay. What type of policy do you want to attach here? So I want to actually create a new policy. I don't want to use this policies which are created by AWS. I'll create a new policy myself. Okay, so I'll put this into the JSON because I already have one policy with me. You can either go to the visual editor for creating the policy, okay, but I want to use the JSON. So it is allowing to list all the buckets, and it is allowing to list the bucket and get the bucket location, and it is allowing to get the objects from this particular bucket production app. But for us this will change. If I go to S3, then let's say I'll be using this particular bucket, my bucket KT37 okay, this is public. Instead of using public bucket, I'll be using this sample bucket AWS 12345. I'll go here, I'll change the name. Instead of production, I want sample bucket. Okay, wherever it is applicable, replace the name. So once this is done, I can click on next. If I want, I can add the tags over here. I'll be reviewing my policy, right? It is giving the S3 list read write access, and we will be creating this particular policy over here. You have to give the name. Okay, let's say I'll be just giving this policy a name, S3 limited access. Okay, and now we can create the policy. Policy has been created. So what we'll do is we'll go back over here into the roles where we were creating the role, and here I'll try to search for S3 limited access. Let us just refresh this once because it is recently created, and now I can try to S3 limited access. This is where we get our custom policy. Okay, I'll select this, I'll click on next. So this policy will be attached with this particular role. What I'm trying to name this role, I'll name this role as S3 role. Okay, and let's create this particular role over here. S3 role dev. Right, S3 role dev is what I am creating over here. So it is created. Okay, so one thing is done. We have created a role, right? Now, the other thing that we want to do here is I want to grant the access. I want to create assume role. Okay, that Jane should be able to assume this particular role. So I have to apply permissions for Jane as well. Okay, so for that I have to go into the root user of the development account. Right now, if you see here, I am into the Jane user. Okay, so I don't want that. I'll sign it out from here. I will click on sign into the console. We want to log in as Jane, but later on. Okay, first of all, I have to create one policy which allows Jane to take up this role. This is the let me just check. Okay, so now I am into the root account of developer, right? If I go to IAM, then I want to create a role over here. Okay, but before I create the role, what I'll show you guys is I'll go to users and I'll go to Jane. And for Jane, we have only one permission, EC2 full access. Okay, she's not having any access for S3. But now we are creating the role so that we can give temporary access of S3 for this Jane. Right. So what I'll do is I'll go to roles again over here. Let's suppose. Okay. Or else instead of going to the roles, I'll go to user itself. I'll go to Jane. Okay. And I'll try to add a permission, which would be one inline policy. Inline policies are something which are specific to this particular person only. Okay, to this specific user only. So what I'll do is I'll give this permission, allow to assume the role. Okay, into which production account do I want to assume the role? So I'll go back to my production account over here and I'll be copying this particular account ID. Okay, and I'll be pasting this over here. And the role was S3 role dev, right? So this is the role into this particular production account that this Jane should be able to assume, right? We will once review the policy. It is reviewed, right? And will be creating the policy, but here we have to give the name, right? So what name we are going to give? Let's say we will be naming as allow assume S3 role in production. Okay, let's create the policy over here. So we have created the policy now, right? So now what I'll do is I'll show you one important thing over here, which is I'll be signing out of the root account and I'll be testing this role, whether I'm able to get this particular permissions or not. Okay, so for that again, I'll be signing in as Jane. So for that, give me 1 second. So we are here, I'll put the account username and the password. So we are into Jane's account right now, right? If I just click on here and if I click on switch roles, so I have to click on switch role over here. I have to give the account ID, in which account I want to go. Okay, so again, I'll be selecting this account ID of the production account, right? I'll come here. The role was S3 role dev, right? And the display name, I'll be just putting it as it's not compulsory, so let us keep it as it is, and you can also select the color if you want. So I'm good with it. Let's try to switch the roles. So now you can see we are into the S3 role dev, right? And if I try to, with this particular role, if I try to go to S3, remember we have given the permission to one of the bucket only, right? Into our production environment, we were having so many buckets, right? So here you can see we are having insufficient access to all of these, right? But we had the access to the sample bucket AWS 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can see this particular objects inside. Right, now if I go back one step into the buckets and if I go inside of demo test bucket, then I do not have any permissions to list the object over here, right? But with sample bucket AWS, I do have the permission to list the objects, I can upload the objects, or even I can get the objects, right? But with the same role, I am into the S3 role, and let us go to EC2 because Jane was having EC2 full access, remember? So let's see over here whether we are getting the EC2 access or not. If you see, you'll be getting the API errors everywhere. Okay, API error. Why? Because the role right now, the hat we have put right now is the hat that is giving us only the permission to S3, that to a specific bucket, right? So any other service that you try to go to is going to give you errors because these are the temporary roles. So whatever permissions are attached to these roles will be just able to access that particular permissions. If you want to switch back, okay, if you want to access the EC2, the permissions which were originally given to you, then you have to click on switch back. Okay, so I'll click on switch back. So once I click on switch back, I have the EC2 permissions on. So now you'll not get any errors over here, right? Because you are getting the permissions which are attached to your user, not to the role. But with this, if you try to go to S3, okay, we were having EC2 full access given to Jane as user, right? So if I try to go here in the buckets, you will see no buckets found because you do not have access to this particular area. So this is all about roles. I hope this clarifies things.